They always schedule these things for 4:59 p.m. Like corporate bloodletting is easier when done in business casual right before happy hour. I was halfway through highlighting a clause in a federal subaward agreement when the new VP strutted in. Heels too high for her age, blazer too tight for the occasion, and a confidence so loud it drowned out 17 years of silence I'd worked hard to preserve. She dumped her designer tote on the conference table like it was a gavel and clicked the clicker with all the grace of a toddler finding the TV remote. Slide 1. Operational Efficiency Initiative Q4. Translation. Heads were about to roll. We need to modernize, streamline, and frankly, clean house, she said like she was auditioning for a TED Talk nobody asked for. We're carrying too much dead weight. Legacy roles. Redundant systems. Outdated functions. We need to make space for agility. I didn't blink. Not because I was numb, but because I'd seen this script before. You don't survive nearly 2 decades in defense compliance without learning when to keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. Then she dropped the bomb. Effective next week, all departments will undergo restructuring. That includes a review of senior staff with salaries exceeding $150,000 and minimal client-facing responsibilities. Her eyes didn't meet mine, but her voice did. And it was surgical. She wanted to sound like a disruptor. All I heard was the hum of ignorance on a power trip. Someone 3 seats down, new project manager, maybe 6 months in, raised a hand. Wait, does this mean we're letting go of compliance leads too? Even the federal liaisons? The room went still. Like even the HVAC system was holding its breath. She smiled, tight, teeth-baring, the kind of smile you give a cop when they ask if you know why they pulled you over. No one is exempt from review. Titles don't equal value. If we can automate it or outsource it, we will. I didn't say a word. Just glanced at the laminated DoD clearance matrix on the wall behind her. The one I'd updated last quarter. The one with exactly one name listed under primary clearance custodian. UID 74A. Mine. Across the room, someone from HR shifted in their seat. Alan. 48, balding, soft-spoken. Been there almost as long as me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally said, we may want to double-check clearance dependencies before finalizing that list. Some of the roles are not exactly replaceable. She didn't even look at him. Thanks, Alan. We've already reviewed the org chart. No, sweetheart. You reviewed a spreadsheet. An org chart doesn't show you who actually keeps the $5.8 billion pipeline compliant with Title 32, Section 2001, or who memorized the 87-page NISPM supplement by heart, because the Pentagon updated their protocol one Tuesday in 2017 and forgot to email anyone but me. She moved on. New slide. Something about a rebranded innovation initiative called Phoenix Protocol. Buzzwords flying like pigeons in a food court. People nodded. Cowards mostly. A few looked sick. One guy, Charlie from Data Assurance, looked at me and mouthed, "Are you on the list?" I shrugged. I already knew. The meeting ended with polite applause, which felt like clapping at your own execution. I packed up my yellow legal pad and my red pen, the one I used to flag language that could get us audited, and walked out. In the hallway, Alan caught up. Voice low. She's green. Real green. Doesn't even know what UID means. She will, I said almost kindly. He hesitated. You gonna fight it? No, I said, and looked down at the federal token still clipped to my belt loop. I'm just gonna wait. Because here's the thing about legacy systems and old men with clearance levels higher than their cholesterol. We don't shout. We don't sue. We don't scream into the void. We outlast ChatGPT's Ghazal. They called me in at 9:07 a.m. sharp, because God forbid they do it after my coffee. The invite said quick check-in. Goo. That's like calling a guillotine a French neck massage. Room 3B. Neutral walls, neutral chairs, neutral expressions. The VP sat at the head of the table like she'd been rehearsing this scene in her bathroom mirror. Power stance and all. To her right, HR. To her left, some junior legal rep who looked like he still slept with a nightlight. Let's make this brief, she said, flipping open a manila folder like it contained anything that mattered. After reviewing department budgets, we've decided to move forward without your role. Today will be your last day. No preamble. No thank you for your service. Just a bullet to the career I'd spent 17 years reinforcing with duct tape and late nights. I stared at her for a full 5 seconds. Let the silence rot the air. 17 years, I said flatly. And I don't even get a paperweight? HR chuckled nervously. VP didn't. There's a severance package, she offered, like that was supposed to matter. Like money replaces mission. Like I didn't give a damn about what we built. Classified back-end systems, secure pipelines, regulatory scaffolding most of these children couldn't pronounce, let alone maintain. The lawyer slid a termination letter across the table. You'll need to return all company property. Badge, laptop, keycard. If you've accessed any confidential. I know the drill, I interrupted. I wrote the drill. They assigned me an escort. Not even a manager. A security guy named Dale who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I followed him down the hallway of engineers I'd onboard, trained, debugged systems for. None of them looked up. One pretended to sneeze to avoid eye contact. And there it was, the walk of 12. 12 steps past 12 desks of people who used to say, couldn't have done it without you, man. Now they shrank back into their monitors like I was contagious. Dale said something about grabbing my personal effects. I didn't respond. Just boxed up my things with the efficiency of a man who's been waiting for the storm since he first saw the clouds. Laptop, closed. Badge, unclipped. Keycard tossed. All placed gently on her desk. Not shoved. Not slammed. Placed. Like evidence. Except one thing. The federal token. A tiny black key fob with a rotating 6-digit code. Refreshed every 30 seconds. My access credential. My lifeline to the Department of Defense back-end system. That. I pocketed. Not because I was stealing, but because it wasn't theirs to begin with. It was tied to my name, my clearance, my signature, my certification. That token didn't open any doors for them without me standing behind it. As I turned to leave, I muttered, 72 hours. Dale blinked. Sorry. Nothing, I said. Because here's the thing about the clearance revocation window. Once you're removed from the system, the government assumes the worst. You have 72 hours to reassign custodianship, recertify digital trails, and validate backup protocols. If you don't, everything linked to that UID mine gets auto-flagged as compromised. And if no one steps in to catch it, access revoked, projects frozen, contracts voided. 17 years of infrastructure gone dark like someone pulled the plug on the Pentagon's hallway light. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. Just stepped into the elevator with an intern who held it open like he was doing me a favor. Cardboard box in one hand. Federal token in the other. And for the first time in years, I felt light that I spent that first morning drinking burnt diner coffee out of a chipped mug that still said #OneDad. Even though my daughter now calls me by my first name, and only texts on holidays. The silence in my house was loud. The kind that makes your ears ring and your thoughts meaner than they should be. No emails. No voicemails. No panicked knocks at the door. Just me, a half-eaten sausage biscuit, and the federal token sitting on the table like a loaded revolver no one knew was missing. I didn't pace. Didn't doomscroll. I just sat in that old recliner I'd been threatening to replace since the Obama administration, and watch the numbers roll on that token. 6 digits, refreshing every 30 seconds. A little heartbeat. Not mine. The company's. The one they just unplugged. Somewhere in that overpriced office tower, in a boardroom full of glass, recycled oxygen, and overconfident facial expressions, the new VP was likely pacing in heels and basking in applause. Maybe she was even clicking through a slide deck titled something like, Q4 Operational Wins. Building leaner, smarter, faster. Slide 7 probably said it all. Redundancy elimination. Minus $310,000 per annum. Translation. They fired the guy who spoke fluent federalese, carried a top-secret clearance, and held custodianship over every encrypted portal connected to the Department of Defense. You don't get that kind of access by asking nicely. You earn it by living like a ghost. Background checks so deep they fingerprint your high school gym teacher, quarterly polygraphs, and the kind of just one beer, social life that keeps you boring enough to truss with missile schematics. And now all of it, every last gateway, certification, and portal. They were about to learn just how non-transferable it really was. See, when a custodian leaves under non-continuity conditions, that's the term. They have 72 hours to reassign custodianship in the DoD's centralized clearance and access control system. Not in-house. Not some internal handoff. Federally. Otherwise, that access expires like spoiled milk. And no one, not even Daddy's little VP, can call and beg their way back in. Back at HQ, I imagined her pacing through the executive suite like she owned it, spouting half-digested TED Talk quotes and telling her assistant to circle back on next-gen compliance solutions. She probably thought I was running some bitter Reddit rant or drafting a tell-all LinkedIn post. Nah, I was just watching the token. T-minus 68 hours 42 minutes. No pings. No system pull requests. Not even a courtesy text. Which meant no one on their side had even thought to check. I cracked a smile. Not because I was cruel, but because it always plays out this way. Arrogance pretending to be efficiency. Youth confusing power with immunity. They didn't ask what I actually did, because they thought the answers were in a spreadsheet. Spoiler. They weren't. They were in my head. In the routines I ran every Friday at 6 p.m. In the emergency audit scripts only I had access to. In the knowledge of which compliance key rotated when, and what federal handshake protocol each subcontractor used when connecting to our servers. You don't hand that off with a pink slip and a best of luck. And when that last hour ticked down, when the server logs went cold and UID 74A vanished from the government access registry, they wouldn't even know who to call. Because by the time they noticed I was gone, I'd already disappeared. IT hit on a Tuesday morning, 10:14 a.m., time-stamped right between a Zoom call about RFID seal procurement and someone's all-staff email about the vending machine stealing their dollar. The subject line was quiet, surgical, urgent. Clearance UID 74A access disruption. From, do not reply at WHS Mill. They came in without sirens or suits, just two guys in khakis and government windbreakers, walking past reception like they were early for a dentist appointment. But the second one flipped his badge. The oxygen left the room. Monday, 9:03 a.m. The front desk buzzed the CEO's office. The receptionist's voice cracked. Two federal agents are here for a scheduled audit review. They said you were expecting them. They weren't. Nobody was. They were from the Defense Security Service. A polite way of saying, the guys who make sure your company doesn't accidentally hand missile schematics to Belarus. They didn't come to arrest anyone. They weren't there with subpoenas or threats. No guns. No shouting. Just calm, bureaucratic death by clipboard. They asked to speak with the head of IT security, the clearance compliance officer, fired, the contracts liaison, the VP of operations, newly minted, recently manicured, and the CEO himself. The agents laid out their requests like ordering at a diner. Full access logs for the last 90 days. Clearance renewal paperwork for all UID holders. The continuity of custodianship report for all encrypted DoD-linked systems. Any incident logs filed in the past 10 business days. The CEO's face started twitching halfway through the list. The way a man twitches when he realizes someone else drove the bus off the cliff, but he's the one being handed the parachute after the ground's already rushing up. The VP, God bless her, waltzed in halfway through and said, "Oh, I think this might be a glitch in our SSO architecture. We're modernizing some workflows." One of the agents looked up from his binder and replied, perfectly flat, "Ma'am, this isn't a glitch. It's a federal custody void. Your company no longer has a registered custodian with Tier 3 authority. That is not a workflow. That is a full compliance failure." She blinked like she'd just been hit in the face with a thesaurus. Legal started making calls. Someone pulled out a hard copy of the org chart. One poor IT manager vomited in the third-floor restroom and tried to pass it off as food poisoning. Meanwhile, across town, I was sitting in the back booth of a Waffle House with a plate of cold hash browns and a phone that buzzed exactly once. Unlisted number. I answered anyway. A woman's voice. "Come. Professional. Mr. Delaney?" Speaking. "This is Diana Fry with the DoD's Compliance and Protocol Division. I just wanted to confirm that you followed procedure during your departure last week. I did. You didn't attempt to reassign access? Nope. You removed all secondary custodian override paths? Yes. Pause. Then. Thank you for disabling access responsibly. That was the right call. I wish more people handled exits with that kind of clarity. I knew what would happen if I didn't, I said. Yes. And now so do they. She hung up. I stared at the phone a moment, then pushed my plate away. Back at the office, the federal agents were now requesting login videos, keystroke logs, anything that could prove no one else had access to the encrypted vaults. They weren't mad. They were documenting, which in many ways is worse. Because when the feds get quiet, that's when you're already screwed. They're not trying to stop the car. They're just here to fill out the accident report. And in the middle of it all, the scrambling, the shouting, the slow unfurling panic, there she was. The VP, still insisting it was a minor hiccup. Still talking about system optimization. Still smiling like a toddler with a paintbrush and a ruined wall behind her. And the best part? They hadn't even looked at the dollar value of the frozen contracts yet. That came next. It happened at 2:42 p.m. on a Wednesday. A digital guillotine from the Pentagon's procurement interface. The notification read like an obituary. Notice of temporary pipeline suspension. As of 14:42 Eastern Standard Time, all active DoD engagements with redacted technologies are suspended pending internal security review and custodial reassignment audit. No further communications, data transfers, or project activity shall be permitted until status is resolved. $5.8 billion. 23 live contracts. 6 Pentagon-facing platforms. All frozen mid-process like someone hit pause on a war movie and lost the remote. The email hit every executive inbox simultaneously. You could practically hear the air conditioning skip a beat as the company's future got thrown into purgatory by an automated system that didn't care about intentions, only protocols. By 2:44, the Slack channels were chaos. By 2:45, the first subcontractor emailed to re-evaluate deliverable timelines. By 2:50, 2 more pulled out entirely, one citing compliance volatility, the other just writing "Jesus Christ, what happened?" At 3:01, the CEO assembled what he called an emergency executive alignment meeting. Translation: everyone with a name on the org chart got dragged into the boardroom while the walls caught fire. The VP was there. Tight bun. Clicking pen. Not a drop of sweat. Still clinging to the hope that jargon would outrun accountability. The CEO stood at the head of the table. Red in the face. Tie loose. He looked like someone had told him his yacht was on fire, and he couldn't remember which ocean it was in. He slapped the printout on the table so hard the ink practically bled. Who authorized this? He growled. Who fired the clearance custodian without transition protocol? Silence. He pointed down the table at the legal director. Why didn't you flag this? I did, the man said, voice shaking. I flagged it in red during the termination review. You said it was fine. That she had the authority. Eyes turned to the VP. She blinked. I thought the clearance was shared. Like department-wide. No, muttered someone near the end of the table. That's not how federal custodianship works. The CEO looked like someone had kicked him in the soul. He turned slowly to the board chair. An old guy who'd survived 2 mergers, a shareholder coup, and prostate cancer. Who, the CEO hissed, signed off on this? The chair leaned back, sighed, rubbed his temples, then said quietly, your daughter. Silence again. But this one was colder. Meaner. You could almost hear the company's stock price falling like coins down a drain. Then the yelling started. COO accusing legal of negligence. Legal throwing it back at HR for improper exit protocol. The VP snapping back that she was given full authority and was told to act decisively. CFO muttering about investor lawsuits. The IT director just sat with his head in his hands. And in the corner of all this was the company's internal project dashboard, flickering like a dying heart monitor. Green lights turning yellow, then red, then blinking disconnected. All because the name UID 74A wasn't in the system anymore. All because they thought I was just a line item. Funny thing about foundations, no one notices them until the roof caves in. And the rubble was just beginning to fall. The first headline hit the defense contractor forums at 6:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Redacted Technologies DoD contracts suspended pending clearance audit. Source: Insider claims mismanagement tied to security custodianship breach. By 7 p.m., a less tactful version was circulating on Reddit's r/security clearance thread. $5.8B pipeline frozen after company forgets to assign clearance holder. Top comment: someone's daughter playing exec again? Second top: this is why we don't let MBAs touch UID registries. By midnight, the whispers were no longer whispers. The press was on it. Blogs, forums, LinkedIn newsletters with too many emojis. Even the military procurement Slack channels had started sharing screenshots. But the real damage came at 6:30 a.m. sharp, when Bloomberg's ticker ran. Redacted, tech stock plummets 17% after DoD pipeline disruption. Analysts cite internal clearance mismanagement and executive oversight. Nothing says, your company's on fire, like Wall Street watching it burn with popcorn. The CEO went radio silent. Board emails went from urgent alignment to outside counsel review. Internal memos shifted tone overnight, from blame and finger-pointing to desperate triage. Legal was no longer asking who did it. They were asking if anyone knew how to undo it. Spoiler: they didn't. At 10:04 a.m., the Pentagon's procurement dashboard listed the firm as temporarily non-compliant, pending custodiare instatement. By noon, the subcontractor count dropped from 42 to 31. 3 major vendors issued pause statements. One just sent a cease and desist. Another wrote, "We cannot risk secondary exposure to federal freeze orders stemming from your internal decisions." Translation: you just turned radioactive. The VP? Gone. Officially, she was placed on administrative leave pending internal review. Unofficially, she was tossed into the backseat of a corporate Escalade and driven home with a pink folder and a silence so loud you could hear her LinkedIn badge blinking offline. Her Instagram, once a shrine to hustle culture and airbrushed ambition, went dark within hours. No more posts about being a woman in leadership. No more gym selfies tagged #Rise and Grind. No more Canva quote cards that read "boss up" or "back down." Just blank. The last story still lingering on her profile? A boomerang of her spinning in her new corner office chair, captioned, "Making moves nail polish. Oh sweetheart. You made one all right." Meanwhile, I was at a local tire shop getting my truck rotated, sipping gas station iced tea, watching the coverage play out on my phone. A news anchor was mid-sentence, saying something about clerical oversight involving security credentials, when the camera cut to stock footage of our building, logo blurred, but still instantly recognizable to anyone who mattered. That's when I got the text from Marcus again. They're asking if you'd consider consulting, even just temporarily. CEOs getting pressure from upstairs. They're scared. I didn't respond. I just kept scrolling, kept watching, kept sipping. Because the beauty of federal systems is this: once you're flagged non-compliant, you don't just fix it. You earn your way back. And that takes time. Time they no longer had. The call came at 7:06 a.m. on a Friday, just as I was pouring cheap black coffee into a chipped mug that said "Property of Area 51. I can neither confirm nor deny this beverage." Unknown number. Langley area code. I let it ring twice. Then picked up. "Mr. Delaney?" the voice asked. Calm. Crisp. A woman this time. Probably mid-40s. Professional cadence, no filler words. Speaking. "This is Director Alston with the Office of Defense Compliance Transition. We're coordinating the onboarding of replacement custodians following the recent clearance breach at Redacted Technologies." I said nothing, just leaned against the counter and let her fill the air. "We'd like to extend a formal consultancy offer. 6 weeks, classified onboarding, non-disclosure maintained under existing contract law. You would supervise transfer of custodianship, verify credentials, and assist with the recertification audit process." I let her talk. She mentioned compensation, clearance tiers, travel logistics, then paused. We understand this isn't just professional. It's personal. That earned a small laugh out of me. No, director. It was never personal. That's the problem. To them, I was just a line item. Silence. Then, so is that a no? It is. Understood. Should anything change, you have my direct line. She hung up. No hard sell. No guilt trip. Just a professional offering a lifeline to people who didn't deserve it. 10 minutes later, the second call came. This one I recognized before the first syllable hit the line. Delaney, the CEO breathed, voice wrecked. He sounded like a man 10 days deep into a bottle and 5 days late on salvation. You got a minute? Not really. Listen. I know you probably think look, I was wrong. We mishandled this. I should have looked deeper. Should have checked protocol before she made that call. But you and I, we worked together for 17 years. You know I didn't mean for this to happen. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't threatening. He was pleading. I need your help, he said, and his voice cracked. They won't even talk to us anymore. We're locked out of recertification. We lost 3 contracts just yesterday. I've got board members threatening lawsuits. Our defense attorneys don't even understand half the language in the revocation packet. You're the only one who ever kept this place stable. I let him spill. Let him drag himself across the glass floor he built under our feet. Then I spoke slow and quiet. You should have read the clearance agreement. Pause. Section 4B. He said nothing. Tied to me. Not transferable. No continuity clause unless initiated during active employment. No retroactivity. No waiver. No grace period. Long silence on his end. Then, we didn't know. I know. I didn't gloat. Didn't yell. Didn't even raise my voice. Just breathed. Let the weight settle. You made a choice, I said. You let someone in who didn't understand what she was breaking. And you fired the one person who knew where the fuses were. Another long pause. If you change your mind. I won't. Click. I didn't slam the phone. Didn't toss it. Just set it on the counter and walked outside. The morning air was cold. Crisp. The kind of air that bites a little but reminds you you're still alive. I sat on the porch steps, sipped my cooling coffee, and watched a freight train rumble in the distance. Not triumphant. Not bitter. Just done. Sometimes walking away is the last responsible thing you can do. It was a Thursday when the black SUVs rolled up. 4 of them, tinted windows, government plates, parked diagonally across the fire lane like they owned it. Because technically they did. I was 2 blocks away, tucked into a corner booth at Molly's Cafe, halfway through a blueberry muffin, and pretending to care about a crossword puzzle I wasn't solving. The same booth I used to sit in on Sundays, back when deadlines weren't life or death, and the only audits I worried about were cholesterol-related. The waitress, a kid with pink streaks in her hair and earbuds in, had just asked if I wanted a refill when the first agent stepped out of the lead vehicle. Gray suit. Leather binder. No rush in his stride. Just the slow, deliberate walk of a man with purpose. And paperwork that made men cry. Inside the glass fortress of redacted technologies, I could see silhouettes moving like rats in a flood. Blinds were snapping shut. Lights blinking overhead. The building looked like it was trying to close its own eyes. Then came the CEO. Same gray suit as always. Same perfect part in his hair. But his posture? That was new. Bent, uncertain. He came to the door like a child opening it for a cop after a noise complaint. Smile too tight, handshake too limp. The agent didn't smile back. He handed over a thick packet, sealed, tabbed, embossed with the golden seal of the Department of Defense. I couldn't hear a word, but I didn't need to. I'd written the damn script. The CEO flipped to the first page. Then the second. By the third he slowed. Clause 4B. Subsection 7. Termination conditions. Custodianship continuity failure. Federal pipeline revocation. Effective retroactively. Final page, my name. My signature. My clearance ID. My revocation timestamp. You'd think the moment he read it would come with fireworks. With shouting. With some Shakespearean meltdown or throat-ripping scream. No. It was quiet. Too quiet. Because it wasn't just rage on his face. It was the horror of realization. That kind of deep, stomach-plunging collapse that comes when you finally understand the scope of the thing you broke. His face went slack. Eyes wide. Mouth slightly open. Hands trembling just enough to betray the businessman mask. Shock. Rage. Despair. All in one slow-motion implosion of a man who thought he'd seen everything. Until the government walked through his front door and showed him the price of arrogance. Across the street, I took one last sip of my coffee, set the mug down, and slid the bill under the salt shaker. Didn't gloat. Didn't smile. Just stood, stretched, and walked toward the parking lot while the sky opened up with soft autumn wind. And as I reached the curb, I said it to myself. Not loud, not bitter, just like a man stating the weather. Funny thing about clearances. You don't notice the lock until the key walks away.